It's that time of year again, where we start to wind down towards the holiday season and New Year. And of course, that means that while most automakers also tend to wind down their press releases and reveals, sometimes, occasionally, breaking news stories grab us by the metaphorical short and curlies and demand our attention. It luckily doesn't happen all the time. Some years we get to blissfully create a huge amount of content for release during the holidays and actually have some time off, and there are no major breaking news stories that require our analysis. This year, though, is not one of those years, and while I'm sure this story will morph in the coming 2 weeks while everyone is hopefully off, it's dropped just before the cut-off deadline, so let's do it. Are Nissan and Honda about to say, I do, for the sake of EVs and their combined future? It certainly looks like it, but there's some important context to bear in mind.
Marriage is what brings us together today.
A slightly snarky intro aside, it does look as if Nissan and Honda are not only rumoured to be considering a merger that will dramatically change both companies' futures, but could help them advance a new joint strategy on EVs, tackle the challenges of Chinese EV companies, and help them collaboratively deal with the looming threats of massive import tariffs at the hands of a xenophobic US president whose current primary advisor seems to be the guy whose company is a direct competitor in the EV market segment. Yeah, I know we can expect filings from non-US automakers against the US federal government with the World Trade Organization in the near future, but right now, the word of the day is oligarchy. So today, we're going to examine what we know as of Wednesday, December 18th, 2024, which is when we're filming this. And yes, I'm adding the date because I know things will change in the next few weeks and this video will likely become very out of date and people will complain. Such is the life of YouTube news. I'm going to start by covering the history of EVs from both firms, explain what the proposed merger is about, and examine what the likelihood of it happening really is. So let's start with some history. Go back to this time in 2010, and Japanese automaker Nissan was among the world leaders in electric cars. It had beaten the majority of its rivals to market with the Nissan Leaf, a car named with a backronym that stood for Leading Environmentally Friendly Affordable Family Car, and it had just started deliveries of the same in the US. The Nissan Leaf was a pretty revolutionary vehicle. It was the first mass-production, highway-capable EV with comprehensive support out of the box for high-power DC fast charging. It could seat 5, and it had a highway-capable range of around 70-ish miles or 125 kilometres in the real world. And at a time where Tesla had yet to start production of the Model S, Chevrolet was opting to produce the Volt, a range-extended EV with a limited EV-only range, and most automakers were still mocking EVs as pointless and problematic. Nissan was very much ahead of the curve. With Lebanese, French, Brazilian CEO Carlos Ghosn at the helm, someone who had pushed Nissan very hard towards electrification, the company seemed almost unstoppable. Meanwhile, rival Japanese automaker Honda was far more circumspect on the whole EV thing. In 2010, it was working hard to promote the second generation of its Honda Insight hybrid. Like fellow Japanese automaker Toyota, Honda believed the future lay in hybrid and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles rather than battery electric ones, and it was churning out high volumes of vehicles built with its IMA hybrid technology around the world. Its hydrogen fuel cell sedan, the Honda Clarity, was being produced in limited numbers and, like a generation of battery electric vehicles before, was only available in lease to select customers in very limited markets around the world. After a further 8 years as joint CEO of both Renault and Nissan, companies who had a mutual shareholding in one another as a result of his appointment, things changed dramatically for Carlos Ghosn and, by proxy, for Nissan. Before you-know-what hit the spinning thing, Carlos Ghosn's leadership at Nissan had seen it establish 3 different production lines for the Leaf around the world, bring the ENV200 van to market in multiple markets, and Nissan start work on vehicle-to-grid and vehicle-to-home technology with partners like TEPCO in Japan. The second-generation Leaf had entered into development, and just about the time that Ghosn left Nissan, the second-generation Leaf was revealed. Of course, it wasn't all rainbows and puppy dogs. Nissan had a tough time with PR disasters and recalls. Early Nissan Leaf owners in the US, or rather their cars, suffered premature battery aging caused by exposure to extreme heat. And the way Nissan originally handled that disaster did it no favours. Then there was the aftermath of the 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan, which impacted Nissan's production and parts capabilities for a substantial time. But for the most part, Nissan and Renault seemed to be making pretty popular EVs for early adopters. Honda, meanwhile, didn't do a whole lot in the EV space. Primarily, due to the Californian EV mandate, Honda did produce limited numbers of fit EVs, a car to this day that is one of my favourite Honda EVs. It was small, it was functional, and it was versatile. But again, it was only available as a limited production leased vehicle in select key markets, and at the end of the lease period, like so many EVs a generation before it, every one of those quote-unquote experimental Honda Fit EVs were taken back and disposed of. Honda's next offering, the Honda Clarity EV, was similarly challenged out of the gate, but for different reasons. It was a passable full-size EV in terms of looks, but lacked the range and the performance chops to compete in a marketplace which by this point was full of cars like the Tesla Model S. And its plug-in hybrid sibling, the Clarity PHEV, offered longer legs, but suffered poor load bay space due to its dual drivetrain, and it felt heavy. And the second-generation Clarity fuel cell sedan, which also shared a design and chassis? Well, again, limited market, limited availability, and oh so many early adopter problems that frankly made the challenges of owning an EV in the 2010s pale into insignificance compared to the early adopter hell of a fuel cell sedan in 2018. No, scrap that, the current hell of being a fuel cell sedan owner. In Europe, meanwhile, the Honda E was a big hit among fans wanting a compact, Japanese-influenced city car. But despite its fun and quirky design and urban style, it didn't last long for reasons. And in 2018, when Japanese authorities arrested Carlos Ghosn on a very long laundry list of crimes against Nissan and against the Japanese government, frankly, neither company was in any good position in the EV space. I'm not going to go into the actual case against Carlos Ghosn or talk about the truly incredible escape he made from Japan inside an instrument case, but if you haven't seen the documentary series about it, go and watch it because it's eye-opening on many levels. Without Carlos Ghosn at the helm, Nissan's EV game changed significantly. Its new CEO, spurred on by the board of directors, wanted to punt on EV technology and instead double down on mild hybrid tech. Changes to the Japanese electrical grid in the aftermath of the 2011 tsunami meant that EVs weren't the darlings they once were amongst Japanese buyers, and aided by a push from the Japanese government and its then president, the late Shinzo Abe, Japan wanted to push towards hydrogen fuel cell vehicles above EVs. And If you'll forgive the very high-level history and my skipping a lot of actually what happened, we're left with where we are today. Both companies now offer electric crossovers, reasonably competent. The Aria for Nissan and the eNY1 for Honda in Europe and Prologue EV in North America. But while the Prologue is selling in decent enough volumes, in fact it had a really strong last few months for sales in the US, it relies on a manufacturing agreement with GM since that vehicle is built on GM's Ultium platform. GM has already begun talking about what's coming after Ultium, and Honda's been promoting its next generation of EVs, which it previewed earlier this year in the form of the Honda Series 0. But after years of dominating the internal combustion engine world with its excellent engines and high-revving cars, Honda's not in the position it wants to be with EVs. And Nissan? Well, Nissan is suffering massive challenges from Chinese automakers in many markets. Automakers who are outselling and outperforming the Aria and aging Leaf at every single turn. And that's not to say Nissan's EV tech is old, or in fact bad. Nissan's current EV offerings are what I would call solid. But while some rival firms like Hyundai Kia continue to literally hit it out of the park again and again and again, Nissan's offerings are anything but bold or revolutionary and are often based on much older, less capable motor and battery technology. It's got more offerings in Japan, like the oh-so-desirable give it to me please, I want to own one, Keiji Dosa, that is the Nissan Sakura. But outside of Japan, Leaf and Aria plus a commercial van in Europe. And to be clear, Nissan's the one in major trouble here. Honda doesn't really need this partnership as much as Nissan does. I'm going to admit that we are quite a way into the video and I still haven't yet answered the question that I originally asked. Will this marriage happen? But context is queen, and I did want to bring everyone up to speed on what's happened to this point in history. I know many people watching know everything that I've just covered, but also acknowledge that the EV world is expanding so quickly these days that people are becoming EV owners and fans that actually know very little of what happened at the start of the resurgence of the modern EV era. So I wanted to make sure that everyone had the same amount of context. So without further ado, let's talk about this latest piece of news. As reported by multiple outlets this week, initially as nothing more than rumours and now confirmed by executives at both Nissan and Honda, the two companies are in advanced talks about the possibility of creating a new joint venture that would allow the two brands to build and market EVs together. Now, if you have been paying attention this year, that won't be a surprise. In fact, in the spring, Nissan and Honda announced they would work together to build a collaborative partnership in the EV space, working on battery and motor technology platforms and telematics. And this week's news in that context feels like a logical, expected next step if those initial talks went well. And given how much Honda, Nissan, Toyota, and pretty much every other automaker in Japan right now is suffering in the EV market from tough competition from China, not to mention Tesla in the US, it's not really a surprise. Additionally, Toyota, Subaru, and Suzuki are already working together on joint EV platforms, and I'm sure by now that most of you know that the Toyota BZ4X, which we like to call the Busy Forks, is basically the same car underneath as a Subaru Solterra. And last week's reveal of the new Toyota Urban Cruiser in Europe, well, that's just basically the same car as the just announced Suzuki e-Vitara. So it makes sense that Nissan and Mitsubishi, the two have been working together for many years and each have a mutual shareholding in each other and Renault as part of the still just hanging on Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance, would maybe look to Honda to join the party. Honda has hybrid technology smarts that Nissan doesn't, and Nissan has battery electric smarts that Honda could stand to benefit a little from. What's more, a collaboration between two Japanese companies, or possibly three, on future tech is frankly going to be much more palatable to Japanese regulators and the Japanese business community as a whole than a partnership with a nasty foreign automotive rival. I don't want to beat about the bush, but Japanese culture and the business community there is often very wary and distrustful of outsiders. The details of this deal have yet to be finalised, but according to various sources, including Nikkei, Mitsubishi is expected to join the EV partnership, and it's not really had much in the way of plug-in offerings outside of Japan either. And like Nissan, while it started off well with the super adorable iMEV EV and the Outlander plug-in hybrid, it has also really dropped the ball in recent years. But at this juncture, what I want to make absolutely clear and emphasise with my best large handwriting and glow-in-the-dark yellow highlighter pen is that this proposed partnership is not, at least at this moment in time, an actual merger between Nissan and Honda on all fronts. It just appears to be an EV partnership through which both companies will sell vehicles under one badge. And that is very different from a lot of the reporting that I've seen to this point, which have frankly just called it a merger. Now, it could maybe eventually end up with an official merger of the two firms. It's happened before, but much like the Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance, I honestly expect this partnership with Honda to give each member significant autonomy in other areas of their respective business portfolios. And herein lies the key. See, in the respective home market of Japan, both automakers have struggled against cheaper, more competent EVs from China made by companies like BYD and XPeng. To be fair, that's Nissan substantially more so than Honda, but that's followed them into other markets too, like Europe and the wider Asia-Pacific region. And while Nissan and Honda are for now prevented from suffering a similar problem in North America due to tough import regulations that are decidedly anti-Chinese EV, changes to the US government in just a few weeks' time will likely end all EV incentives at a federal level, remove financial assistance programs for new automotive factories, and possibly even restrict imports of non-US EVs to the US. So by working together to pool resources, Honda and Nissan stand to have a better chance of succeeding and surviving in all of those markets with its EV offerings. It's the classic united we stand, divided we fall. And unfortunately, yes, in a market where Elon Musk's Tesla is expected, and signs suggest it already is happening, to get special deals and loophole carve-outs to ensure they continue as they currently are with minimal impacts from any suggested import tariffs and restrictions from the incoming administration, Honda and Nissan are going to need a level of competitiveness that they currently just don't have. So will this merger on EV tech happen? I'd honestly be surprised if it doesn't. Will it happen on a wider scale across the two automakers' other portfolios? I seriously doubt it. Honda is an order of magnitude or two larger than Nissan in the internal combustion engine world, and its portfolio of engines and vehicle offerings eclipses anything Nissan has. Working with Nissan on a new EV brand jointly owned allows Honda to retain its money-making businesses, including in markets like jet skis, motorbikes and quad bikes until the very bitter end of the internal combustion engine, while also providing it less risk from spending money on EV technology that may or may not prove successful. In fact, it's far easier to write off a failed business joint venture than it is for a company to write off the investment into new technology from its main corporate bank account. Ask Volkswagen. The reasoning is the same reason that Ford just spun off its EV models to Model E. It's the reason why many other brands are doing similar things, and while massive multinational companies like Stellantis are pushing hard to rebrand their EV businesses into distinct and separate from suck, squeeze, bang, blow, it's not particularly unusual for this to happen. Ultimately, it makes all of these automakers' bottom lines look a lot healthier. But to finish, there's one other thing I don't think anyone else has discussed here. That little matter of Honda's partnership with Sony. When Sony unveiled its prototype EV at CES in 2019, it caught everyone off guard, including us. We were there. I remember dashing across the vastness of the convention centre to get to Sony's booth to film something, anything, on the stand to publish on the channel. And after that unexpected launch, Sony's leaning into the automotive marketplace has led to its partnership with Honda on the Alfila, a new EV brand made by a new joint partnership between Honda and Sony. Given that Sony is eager to push its in-car tech to any automakers willing to pay, and its existing partnership with Honda, I think this relationship played an important behind-the-scenes negotiation impact for the Nissan deal. After all, it's one thing to work with a rival automaker on a new EV platform. It's something completely different to then throw in a ménage à trois with one of the world's largest, most successful electronics manufacturers. Sony has made no bones about the fact that it wants its Alfila EV to have level 3 semi-autonomous technology. Nissan has already got a massive amount of self-driving tech experience thanks to its fleet of self-driving Leafs, its extensive development of ProPilot, and its partnership with giants of science and tech like NASA. So, while we might like to think that this is just about survival for Nissan and Honda in a world where Chinese automakers and Tesla are still eating the market share up, I think that we would be very foolish to think it's just about EVs. This is about the whole technology stack that Sony, Nissan, Honda, and probably Mitsubishi can bring together as one. And given that the auto industry is full of joint partnerships throughout history, it's frankly often fun to get a bunch of automotive journalists together and see who can join up random companies with as few jumps and partnerships as possible. This is something we can confidently look to happen in the near future. And I, for one, am really happy to see this start to take shape. That is, as long as it makes EVs smarter, cheaper, more versatile, and easier to get behind the wheel of. Thanks for joining me today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them in our Discord chat room, on our Patreon page, or you can reach out to us using Mastodon or Blue Sky. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They are some of more than 1,500 people who help fund this channel using Patreon and YouTube, helping us cover our bills, pay our team, and making sure that we can remain 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, just follow the links below. There are a range of different tiers you can sign up for from as little as $1 a month, or if you pay yearly, just under $11 a year. We've had so many headaches with our credit list in the last few months. I'm sorry. It's been down to a non-functioning program we were using to pull the list out, but today's list has been manually generated, so please do let us know if you're not on there and should be. We are, after all, only human-ish. A huge welcome to our newest supporters: Steve Abernathy, Mike Nichols, Zach Kane, Philip Atkins, Kat, Rob Thomas, Ryan S., Laura, Jay Alor, Celia Gonzalez, France G. France, Nicole Huang, oh yeah, Pedro Huget, Duran Valentin, Winfred Gerlach, John Trindle, Sarah Hendrika Biketon, Edward Kufka, Stephen Beatty, Jonathan Rees, MJY, Owen Patrick, and Gail Jackson. To join the list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your moment of fame. And remember, you can also now gift membership to someone else. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations. And we even have an old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at. The address is listed below. And if you're in need of some swag, you'll find our swag store also in the down below. We've got some fantastic content coming up, so make sure you're subscribed on PeerTube or YouTube, and we'll see you very soon. We make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll like this video, but we also think that you should look at this one. See you soon, and as always, keep evolving!